What if I told you that in a Bitcoin world, banks as we know them would basically disappear? No more money printing, no bailouts, no fractional reserves. Just vaults charging you a small fee to protect your Bitcoin. And honestly, that vision doesn't feel so far-fetched. Welcome back to Captain Altcoin. Today I want to explore a fascinating question. What happens to banks if Bitcoin becomes the backbone of money? I saw this idea shared by a crypto veteran, Fred Krueger, who laid out a vision of a Bitcoin-driven banking system that looks radically different from what we have today. And I've got to say, some of it makes a lot of sense, but it also raises some tough questions. Let me explain what I mean by that. So first, let's start with the most basic role of banks, safekeeping your money. In today's system, when you put $1 in the bank, they don't just hold it for you. They lend it out, multiply it through fractional reserve banking, and keep only a sliver in reserve. That's why banks collapse when everyone tries to withdraw at once. But in a Bitcoin world, things would look very different. Most people, especially businesses, would probably want a bank to just hold their Bitcoin safely, charging maybe a 15 basis point fee. Basically a tiny cut for storage and security. That makes banks more like paid custodians. No casino-style loan books, no bailouts, no too big to fail, and honestly, I find that vision really refreshing. But what about lending? We still need credit, right? Fred Krueger suggests that lending would look more like the merchant banks of Renaissance Florence. People pool Bitcoin together, and the bank lends it out, but without fractionalization. You can't lend out money that doesn't exist, which also means home prices lower, consumer credit tighter, inflation gone. And yeah, that might feel painful at first. We're so used to this inflation-addicted economy where everything is constantly going up in price because of easy money. But in the long run, a sounder system where money can't be endlessly printed might actually stabilize things. One of the big misconceptions is that Bitcoin's fixed 21 million supply cap means there can't be interest rates. But that's not true. In a Bitcoin economy, you could still have positive interest rates paid directly in Bitcoin. There's no conflict. The supply is capped, but circulation and lending can still generate yield. I find this fascinating because it flips the current system on its head. Instead of banks creating money out of thin air, they would have to compete for deposits and lend real Bitcoin. That means savers actually win again. Imagine earning Bitcoin interest without worrying about inflation eating it away. Now, I'm not saying this would be easy. In the short run, less credit creation means slower growth. It means some asset prices dropping, housing especially. People addicted to cheap debt would have a hard time adjusting. But longer term, a system built on hard money like Bitcoin could finally break the cycle of inflation, bailouts, and endless debt bubbles. Banks wouldn't be these monstrous entities running the economy. They'd go back to serving people, safekeeping money and facilitating honest lending. And maybe that's what we need. Smaller, simpler, more trustworthy banks. So what do banks look like in a Bitcoin world? To me, they look like vaults and lending desks, not giant casinos. They'd store your Bitcoin for a small fee. They'd lend out pooled Bitcoin responsibly. And they'd actually have to earn your trust, instead of hiding behind central banks and government bailouts. I know it sounds radical, but the more I think about it, the more I realize how broken our current system is. We've gotten so used to inflation and bailouts that we think it's normal. But what if the Bitcoin standard actually makes banking boring again? Boring, but stable. And honestly, I'd be okay with it. So, what do you think? Would banks survive in a Bitcoin world, or would they disappear completely? Do you want them to be just custodians, or do you think we still need something more like today's model? Drop your thoughts in the comment and let's talk about it. And of course, if you enjoy these videos that look into Bitcoin's future, hit that like button, subscribe to Captain Altcoin, and ring the notification bell so you don't miss what's next.